It is an honor to stand before you today to share a powerful truth that can transform the very foundation of your life. There is a peace that surpasses all understanding, and it comes when we surrender our today and tomorrow to the hands of the Almighty God. It is in this surrender that true freedom, purpose, and fulfillment are found. Surrender is the key to true freedom. Many of us walk through life weighed down by the burden of control, carrying the heavy weight of worries about what may or may not happen tomorrow, or even regrets from yesterday. We're constantly striving, trying to hold everything together, desperately reaching for something that will bring us peace. But the truth is that peace, that freedom we so desire, cannot be attained through our own strength or efforts. It comes only when we surrender, when we release control and trust in the one who holds everything in his hands. Freedom does not come through self-sufficiency. The world teaches us that we must be independent, that we must take charge, that we must have everything figured out in order to be successful. But in reality, the more we try to hold on to everything, the more we find ourselves trapped, struggling with fear, anxiety, and exhaustion. When we surrender, we break free from this cycle of self-reliance and let go of the false illusion of control. It is in surrender that we find true freedom. The freedom to live without fear of the unknown, the freedom to embrace what is, and the freedom to trust that whatever comes, we are not alone. To surrender is not to give up. It is to recognize that there is someone greater, someone who has a purpose and plan far beyond what we can see. When we surrender, we admit that we don't have all the answers, and we stop trying to force things into our own limited understanding. We let go of the need to control every outcome, every situation, and every circumstance. We trust that God, who knows the end from the beginning, has a perfect plan for our lives. This act of surrender is not about weakness, it's about strength. It's about strength in knowing that we are not meant to carry everything alone, that we are not meant to control every aspect of our lives. Surrendering is acknowledging that there is power in God's hands, and His hands are far stronger than ours. The greatest obstacle to freedom is our own desire to be in control. Our desire to have everything in place, to have everything under our control, keeps us bound to fear and doubt. The more we try to hold on to the reins of our lives, the more we realize that we can't do it on our own. Our plans, our efforts, our resources, they are limited. But God's power is limitless. When we surrender, we allow God's infinite power to flow into our lives. And it is His power that can lead us to the freedom we've been seeking all along. Surrendering is also an act of faith. It is trusting that God knows better than we do, and that His ways are higher than our own. In a world that demands instant results, we are often impatient with the process. But when we surrender, we acknowledge that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our expectations. We trust that He is working things out for our good, even when we cannot see the full picture. Surrendering to God is not a one-time event. It is a continual act of faith. Every day we must choose to surrender again, to release our fears, our doubts, and our worries into His hands. True freedom comes when we let go of the need to control and trust that God has already gone before us, preparing the way. It is in this surrender that we find peace, a peace that cannot be shaken by the storms of life. It is in this surrender that we find rest for our souls, knowing that we don't have to do it all on our own. God's plan is perfect, and when we surrender, we step into that plan, allowing His power to work in and through us. Freedom is found in surrender, and it is the only way to truly experience the fullness of life that God has designed for us. Trusting in God's plan for your life is the key to unlocking the fullness of your destiny. So many of us live our lives filled with uncertainty and anxiety because we fail to recognize the truth. We are not in control. We try to plan every detail, make every decision, and determine our own future, believing that if we work hard enough and do enough, we can somehow shape our lives. But the reality is, there is a plan far greater than any of our own. When we place our trust in God's plan, we enter into a life of purpose, peace, and fulfillment. God's plan for your life is not random, nor is it something that can be stumbled upon by accident. It is deliberate, intentional, and full of purpose. It is a plan that He has designed for you from the very beginning of time. The problem is, we often become so consumed with our own desires, our own fears, and our own insecurities that we lose sight of the bigger picture. We want things to happen in our time according to our understanding. But God's ways are far higher than ours. He knows what's best for us, and His timing is always perfect. When we trust in His plan, we stop trying to force our own way and begin to walk in the path He has already laid out for us. It is important to understand that God's plan is not always what we expect. It may not look the way we imagined it would, and it may not follow the timeline we've set for ourselves. But the beauty of trusting in God's plan is that it requires us to let go of our own expectations and to surrender to His will. This is not always easy, especially when things don't go the way we want them to. But it is in these moments of uncertainty that we must lean into God's wisdom and trust that He is working everything together for our good. When we trust in God's plan, we are not simply trusting that He will give us what we want, but that He will give us what we need. God's plan is not designed to make us comfortable, but to make us who He has created us to be. It is through the trials, the challenges, and the struggles that we grow, develop, and become more like Him. Trusting in God's plan means surrendering our desire for control and acknowledging that His plan for us is far better than anything we could have imagined on our own. Trusting in God's plan also means having faith in the process. It's easy to trust when everything is going well, but real trust is demonstrated when we face difficulties, setbacks, and challenges. When life doesn't go the way we planned, it's easy to become discouraged or even to question God's plan for our lives. But it is precisely in these moments that our trust in God is tested. True trust doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from the confidence that God is with us in the midst of them. We can trust that He is using every situation, every challenge, and every setback to shape us into the people He has called us to be. God's plan for your life is not something that you have to figure out on your own. It is not something that you have to control or manipulate. All you have to do is trust Him. Trust that He knows the desires of your heart and that He is working everything together for your good. Trust that He will provide for you, protect you, and guide you every step of the way. When you place your trust in God's plan, you open the door to a life filled with purpose, peace, and fulfillment, knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be at exactly the right time. The power of present surrender lies in the simple yet profound truth that we are not promised tomorrow, yet we are entrusted with today. Too often we find ourselves consumed by what may or may not happen in the future, or burdened by the failures and regrets of the past. Our minds are constantly racing, our hearts heavy with anxiety, and our spirits weighed down with the uncertainties of what lies ahead. But there is freedom and peace found in surrendering not in the distant future or in a far-off time, but in the present moment. The power of surrender is not something that we wait for or hope for. It is something that must be experienced now, in the here. Surrendering in the present moment is not about giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. It is about fully engaging with what God is doing in our lives right now. It means acknowledging that today and every moment within it is a gift. We often look to the future with hope, thinking that happiness or fulfillment is just around the corner. But the truth is that life, in all its richness and depth, is happening now. The power of surrender is in recognizing that the moment you have today is the moment in which God is working, shaping, and molding you. There is no need to wait for a better moment or a more perfect situation. Surrender is about letting go of the need to control the outcome of tomorrow and embracing the fullness of today, where God is at work in the here and now. To surrender in the present is to live with an open heart, to release the grip of worry and doubt, and to trust that God is working even when we cannot see the full picture. It is so easy to become fixated on what's next, always planning, always striving, always hoping for something greater. But when we surrender today, we are saying, I trust that what you have for me in this moment is enough. I trust that you are with me now, and I trust that your plan is unfolding even in the mundane. Present surrender is an act of faith, where we acknowledge that God is in control and that his timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own. It is choosing to trust that the circumstances of today, even if they don't make sense, are part of a greater plan that we may not yet understand. The beauty of present surrender is that it frees us from the constant pressure to control our future. When we surrender today, we release ourselves from the burdens of tomorrow. We no longer need to live in anxiety about what will happen because we have placed our trust in God to lead us, one step at a time. This surrender isn't passive, it is active and intentional. It is the choice to let go of fear, to let go of the need to control every detail, and to live in the confidence that God is in control. When we surrender today, we give up the illusion that we can manage everything on our own and instead place our lives fully in the hands of the one who created us and who holds our future. It is easy to surrender when things are going well, but true surrender is found when we trust God even in the midst of trials, challenges, and unanswered prayers. In those moments, the power of surrender is more real than ever. When we surrender in the present, even in the face of hardship, we declare that God is still good, that his plan is still unfolding, and that his purpose for our lives is still being fulfilled. The power of surrender is not found in waiting for everything to fall into place, but in letting go and trusting that God is working in the present, even in the midst of uncertainty. The present moment is where transformation happens. It is where God's power is most evident, not in the future or in the past. When we surrender to God today, we open ourselves to his transformation. The beauty of this surrender is that it doesn't depend on our understanding, our wisdom, or our strength. It depends on the grace and love of God, which is always available in the present moment. And when we surrender to that grace, we experience the fullness of life that God has designed for us. Right here, right now. Surrender means letting go of control. We live in a world where control is everything. From the moment we wake up in the morning, we start controlling our day, what we wear, what we eat, where we go, and how we behave. Control is ingrained in us. It gives us the illusion of security and the belief that we are the masters of our fate. But the reality is, no matter how much we try to control, there are forces in life that are beyond our grasp. There are moments, circumstances, and events that remind us that we are not in control. Surrender is the recognition of this truth and the willingness to release our need to hold on tightly to everything in our lives. Letting go of control does not mean we abandon our responsibilities or stop making decisions. It doesn't mean we become passive or complacent. It means that we acknowledge that control is an illusion and that we are not capable of managing everything. It means recognizing that while we can make plans and take actions, there is a higher power that guides and directs our lives. Surrendering control is not about being weak or irresponsible. It's about being honest with ourselves and understanding our limitations. It's about recognizing that we are not designed to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, and we are not meant to control every outcome. When we surrender control, we are allowing ourselves to trust in God's wisdom and His plan for our lives. We acknowledge that He knows far better than we do what is best for us. We stop trying to force things to happen in our own timing and in our own way. We begin to trust that God's plan is greater than our own and that His ways are far beyond our understanding. Letting go of control requires a deep level of faith because it forces us to rely on someone other than ourselves. It is a decision to trust in God's sovereignty, knowing that He is working all things together for our good, even when we cannot see it in the moment. The hardest part of surrender is the fear of what might happen if we let go. We are afraid of losing control, of the unknown, of things not turning out the way we hope. But the truth is, when we hold on to control, we limit ourselves. We limit God's ability to work in and through us. Control keeps us stuck in our own limited understanding, and we miss out on the fullness of what God has for us. When we let go of control, we open ourselves to the possibility of experiencing life in ways we never thought possible. We release the fear of the unknown and step into the peace of knowing that God is in control. Letting go of control also means releasing the pressure of perfection. We often try to control every aspect of our lives, thinking that if we do everything perfectly, we will have the outcomes we desire. But the reality is, perfection is unattainable. We are imperfect beings living in an imperfect world. When we surrender control, we stop striving for perfection and start embracing the process. We trust that God is shaping us, molding us, and working in us, even through our imperfections and mistakes. Surrendering control is an ongoing process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a daily decision to release our grip on things, to let go of our fears, and to trust that God is in control. It's about shifting from a mindset of self-reliance to one of complete dependence on God. The more we surrender, the more we experience freedom. We are no longer bound by the need to control every situation. We are free to trust, free to rest, and free to live in the fullness of God's plan for our lives. God's timing is perfect, and it is one of the greatest truths we must understand in our walk of faith. So often we find ourselves in a rush, wanting things to happen quickly, wanting answers to our prayers immediately, and wanting our lives to unfold exactly the way we have planned. We live in a world that is built on speed. Everything is instant, everything is fast-paced, and we are conditioned to expect results right now. But in the kingdom of God, the concept of time is different. God operates outside of time, and His timing is never late, never early, but always perfect. God's timing challenges our human understanding. We want to know when, how, and why things will happen, but God does not reveal His plans to us all at once. Instead, He gives us what we need in the moment. We may think we are ready for something, but God knows the exact time when we will be prepared to handle it. His timing ensures that we are fully equipped to step into the blessings He has for us. Often we find ourselves in seasons of waiting, seasons that feel long and uncertain. But it is in these seasons that God is doing a deep work in us. He is preparing us, refining us, and positioning us for the things He has destined for us. The wait is never wasted. It is in the waiting that we learn patience, perseverance, and trust. We may not always understand why things happen at the time they do, but we must trust that God sees the bigger picture. We see only what is right in front of us, but God sees the end from the beginning. He knows exactly what we need, exactly when we need it, and exactly how it will unfold. His timing takes into account every detail of our lives, and He works all things together for our good. When we align ourselves with His timing, we are able to rest in the peace that comes from knowing that everything is unfolding as it should. God is never caught off guard, never rushing, never reacting. He is always in control, and His timing is always aligned with His perfect plan. It is in trusting God's timing that we find true peace. Our natural tendency is to worry, to question, to try to figure things out on our own. We become anxious when things don't happen when we expect them to. But the peace that surpasses all understanding is found when we surrender our timelines to God. When we stop trying to rush the process and trust that He knows exactly when to move, when to open doors, and when to close them, we can rest in His perfect timing. It's a peace that is unshakable because we know that God is not only working in our present, but He is preparing our future as well. God's timing is perfect, not just because He is all-knowing, but because He is all-loving. He loves us too much to give us something before we are ready. He loves us too much to allow us to step into something that could hurt us or cause us harm. His perfect timing ensures that we are not only receiving blessings, but we are receiving them in the way that will benefit us the most. Sometimes we want things in our own time, but God knows what is best, and He is always working for our good, even when we don't see it. When we learn to trust God's timing, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to make things happen on our own. We stop striving and start resting in His sovereignty. We begin to understand that there is no need to rush, no need to force things, and no need to worry. His timing is perfect, and when we trust it, we will see that everything falls into place exactly as it should. The key is to trust Him fully, to wait with expectation, and to know that in His perfect timing, everything will come to pass. Peace comes through surrender, and it is one of the most profound truths we can embrace in our journey of faith. In a world filled with noise, chaos, and constant distractions, we often find ourselves searching for peace. We look for it in relationships, in success, in possessions, and in achievements. Yet, no matter how much we accumulate or accomplish, true peace seems elusive. The truth is that peace does not come from the external circumstances of our lives, but from within. It comes from surrendering to the will of God, trusting that His plan for our lives is greater than anything we could ever imagine. When we surrender, we release our grip on control. We let go of the need to have everything figured out, to control every detail, and to determine every outcome. This act of surrender is not about weakness or defeat. It is an act of trust, an acknowledgement that we are not in charge and that we don't have to be. It is in this surrender that peace begins to flow. When we stop striving and start trusting, we experience a peace that transcends understanding. We no longer have to carry the burden of figuring everything out on our own. We are free to let go of the worry, the fear, and the anxiety that weigh us down. The reason peace comes through surrender is that when we surrender, we acknowledge that God is in control. We recognize that He is sovereign over all things, and we trust that His plan for our lives is perfect. Surrendering is not about giving up on our dreams or our goals. It is about aligning our hearts with God's purpose and trusting that He will lead us to the right place at the right time. It is about trusting that He knows what is best for us and that He will guide us every step of the way. When we surrender, we stop trying to force things to happen in our own time and in our own way. We trust that God's timing is perfect and that in His hands, everything will work out as it should. Surrender also means releasing our desire for perfection. We live in a world that pressures us to be perfect, to have everything together, and to present ourselves in a certain way. But surrendering means letting go of the need to be perfect. It means accepting that we are human, that we will make mistakes, and that it is okay to not have everything figured out. When we surrender, we let go of the unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves and embrace the grace that God offers. This is where true peace is found, in the acceptance of who we are, imperfections and all, and in the trust that God's love for us is not based on our performance, but on His unchanging grace. In surrender, we also find peace in our relationships. We often struggle with the desire to control how others behave, what they think, and how they feel. But when we surrender our relationships to God, we release the need to control and trust that He will work in the hearts of others. This allows us to love freely without the pressure of trying to change others or make them meet our expectations. Surrendering our relationships to God brings peace, because it frees us from the burden of trying to control things that are beyond our ability to change. Peace comes through surrender, because it is in surrender that we find our true source of strength. When we are weak, He is strong. When we admit that we cannot do it on our own, we open ourselves to the strength and peace that only God can provide. It is in the moments of surrender that we experience the fullness of God's peace, a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but that transcends all understanding. This peace guards our hearts and minds, keeping us grounded and steady no matter what life brings. It is a peace that settles deep within us, giving us rest and assurance in the midst of the storm. Surrendering is not a one-time event. It is a continuous choice we make every day. It is a daily decision to release our desires, our control, and our worries to God. The more we surrender, the more peace we experience. When we learn to surrender fully, we discover the peace that comes from trusting God completely, knowing that He is in control and that He will lead us in the right direction. Peace is not something we find by searching or striving for it. It is a result of surrendering our lives to God and trusting that He will take care of everything.